Good, because I have to
Okay.
train someone in an hour.
Okay, here we go. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. We are in 3 time zones. This is TMS Roundtable Global. My name is Dr. Tova Goldfein, and I am always so happy on a Monday to see Rose. Hi, Rose in Australia, Melbourne.
Hi, Tova. Good morning. Oh, I shouldn't say good morning to David because he's in America. So it's afternoon for him.
Yes, it
but
is.
Welcome to the round table.
Now, thank you for having me.
For you listeners out there and you viewers, David has MS and he has MS, but he's completely active. He doesn't have sorry, let me rephrase that. He was explaining to us that he cannot feel his fingers, for example, but he can move them. He can do all sorts of things with his body. And what he's done is he's connected his brain to his body in a different way. He's got the lesions, he's got all the problems that every MS patient has. But what he's done, he's confounded really his own body system, and he's worked around it. So welcome, David. And please, first of all, I suppose, share a little bit about your background of when you realized you had MS, and then, talk about those 3 acetylcholine and things like that,
sure,
that most people don't know about, because he's actually connected the science very strongly with how he has managed his symptoms, and really he's treated his symptoms as symptoms, not as the disease, so to speak. Welcome, David.
Oh, thank you for having me. So, just to give everybody a little bit of background of who I am and why I do what I do. Most of my life, I was an athlete. I was a boxer. I was a bodybuilder. I owned gyms. I became a trainer. I trained many, many top level athletes and celebrities back in the day when there were no trainers back in the 80s. And nobody heard of a personal trainer. There were no certifications. So I've been doing that type of fitness and training my whole life. At the age of 40, I guess I was 47 when I was diagnosed in 2006. I was working out in the gym, and I got a real severe pain in my left arm, and it went down, radiated down. And your first thought, especially in your mid 40s or heading towards your late 40s, is I'm having a heart attack here. But I quickly threw that out, and I said, I don't have heart attacks, so that's not going to happen. And so I thought, maybe I pinched a nerve. And I pretty much was ignoring the fact that my arm was going numb, that there was tingling, there was a lot of pain there. And weeks went by where I just kept ignoring this, and I kept going to the gym and working out and living my life. That pain and that numbness, that tingling, it radiated, and it started going down my legs, down my back, into my chest. It took about 2 months of denying that there was anything wrong with me before I got to the point where I couldn't even walk. And I was literally paralyzed from the chest from here down, where I couldn't coordinate. I couldn't lift my arms. I couldn't move my legs. My kids were lifting me up and helping me. At that time, the doctor said to me, you
must have been like either totally in denial or so frightened.
Denial more than anything. I don't fear too many things, so it wasn't that I was afraid. I just thought I pinched the nerve, and I thought that the nerve was just getting worse, to the point where I went for 2 months just ignoring it. When I couldn't move, one morning when I woke up and I just basically couldn't move, at that point, that's when the fear hit me, and I said, something's seriously wrong. This is not a pinched nerve. Called the doctor. Doctor immediately, based on what I was telling him, made an appointment for me to get into ER and go right into the hospital. Went into the hospital, and then they sent me to a cancer hospital. I lived in Orlando, Florida. They sent me to a cancer hospital because they put me in an open MRI. I was a big guy, so like they didn't feel that I would fit really well in the regular MRI. So they said, let's make this simple for him. And I didn't, be honest with you, I didn't want to go in the MRI. So they put me in an open MRI, and that open MRI showed a mass it didn't show the lesions, it showed a mass. So they thought I had either a tumor or cancer. So they sent me to the Orlando Cancer Hospital. And I spent 5 days there, and they did all sorts of tests. And the doctor there, one of the brain surgeons came in, and he actually wanted to cut my head open and remove what he thought was a mass. And I said to him, what happens if you go into my head and you remove this mass? He said, well, we don't know if it's cancer or not unless we get in there. He said, but the chances are you're going to be paralyzed because of where this mass is. So I said, so what are my options here? He said, well, if we don't operate, you're going to die of cancer. I mean, this is what he's saying to me without really knowing. He says, so you would die of cancer, or we go in and we operate, and chances are you'll be paralyzed from the waist down, or you could die on the operating table. So I just said to him, I'll take my chances. I'm not letting you cut my head open. He thought I was crazy. Wow. I said, if I'm going to die of cancer, I'll die of cancer. You're not cutting my head open. So a nurse actually heard this conversation, and this was the first day I was in the hospital. And she said, you know what? There's a neurologist. He's one of the top in the country, and he's right down the road, and he comes into this hospital. Let me call him and let him come see you. So he did. His name was Dr. Nick. That's what everybody called him. And he did MRIs. He put me in the MRI machine, the real MRI. They had to drug me to get me in there. I was in there for 6 hours. MRIs, spinal tap, blood work, all those things. The 5th day, he finally sat me down. He said, you've got MS. I said, what's that? I didn't even know what MS was. I knew what MD was. I knew muscular dystrophy, but I didn't know what MS was. So he explained it to me. And I said, I can't have that. I'm an athlete. That doesn't happen. How do you get that? He said, I don't know how you get it. He said, but people get this disease and you have it. And he said, I hate to tell you this, Dave, but you better be prepared to be in a wheelchair because you've got so much damage to the left side of your body because you ignored this for 2 months and the damage was happening. And now you've got no choice but to be in a wheelchair in about 6 months. And he sent me out of the hospital. When I got home, I investigated, what is MS? And I'm giving you guys the short story because all of this is in my book, the long story. But the short story is I went home and I started investigating. And all I saw was a lot of your
book. What's the name of your book? I want to write it down.
David Goliath. And it's my autobiography about getting MS and how I fought it through bodybuilding. But when I started to investigate MS and I started to see all these people online telling me that their life was over and how terrible this disease is and all the medications you need to take and all this, I started to get a little bit depressed about it. And it took me about a year or so to finally grab myself and say, you know what, you're an athlete. You've got to find a way to beat this disease. Well, I had gone from about 200 pounds of muscle to about 160 pounds of nothing in that year. Really got weak, small, shrunk, everything. And when I got back into the gym, which is where I went to start fighting this disease, it was a challenge. I mean, I had guys lifting me in and out of equipment. I couldn't move my leg. My leg was dragging. My arm, my left arm, I couldn't grab anything. I couldn't squeeze my fingers. It was a nightmare, but I knew that I had to do this. And I just did. I just did what I had to do.
David, will you pick up that pen and show our viewers, especially those with MS that are watching now?
So this is what I can do with my left hand with this pen. I could move my fingers. I could squeeze with both hands the same way. But when I first was diagnosed, the pen would go like that. I couldn't grab. I couldn't squeeze. I still don't feel anything in this hand, but I could do whatever I want to do. And that comes from the training that I've developed over these years of having MS. So when I went back into the gym, I started bodybuilding again, and I competed in a bodybuilding competition at 50 years old with MS. And I got a standing ovation. I got a big trophy. Everything was great. But my MS wasn't getting any better by bodybuilding. So I started to look at functional training and the things that I was reading about, that if you do leg lifts and hip bridges and all these functional movements, that it's going to help MS. So I started doing those things. Bodybuilding didn't help. Doing the functional movements didn't help. So I said, there's something missing. These trainers and these people saying that these things are going to help for MS are missing something. And what is it that they're missing? So I started going back into all the years of studying the body and learning about bodybuilding and learning about each muscle group and how the brain works with the muscles. And I said, if I could kind of take that and apply that to MS and figure out, how do I get past the nerve situation? How do I beat the fact that my nerves are really damaged and I've got all these lesions? And I started to create training methods that would get my brain really engaged in my body so that I could force it to get stronger and I could force it to move better. It was not an overnight thing. This didn't happen in 6 months. This took me a long time. I spent 1.5 years training myself before I ever tried to train anyone else with MS, finding what works, what doesn't work. And I found that there was 3 things that are very important for people with MS. One is acetylcholine, which is a chemical in your brain. It's produced, and that acetylcholine actually moves your muscles. And I also found that the acetylcholine not only moves the muscles, but it activates muscle fibers.
They call this ACTH or something?
No, it's acetylcholine. It's spelled, it's ACYTE choline.
Okay, so no, I'm curious about, okay, so this is the chemical that if you think I want to move, it gets produced?
Yes. And they find that people with MS don't produce a lot of it because they're not active and they're not thinking to be active. So that is very important. So acetylcholine production, which is muscle fiber activation, was an important thing. The second thing is what I call brain to muscle and muscle to brain reconnection. Because if you can reconnect your thought to the muscle, you can get the muscle to move. And if that muscle fires back to the brain, then you've got what you need. The third
Isn't it amazing?
Well, the third thing is something that everybody always hears, and that's neuroplasticity. Everybody with MS hears the term neuroplasticity, and it's thrown out very, very loosely, as if all you have to do is lift your legs and do some hip bridges and functional movements and acetylcholine and neuroplasticity and all these things are going to happen, and they don't. So those 3 things are very important, but how do you get them to happen? Well, with science, and if you guys know this because you dive into science to do what you're doing, if you go into science, you will find answers to a lot of things. And the science says, through studies of athletes, not people with MS, because they don't do that many studies with people like me, it's basically athletes, and they studied athletes, and they did focus-driven or thought-based training where they had to think about every movement that they did, every repetition of every set that they did, and every weight that they lifted. They had to focus their thoughts there. Wow. Scientifically, what happened is the more that they focused, the more acetylcholine was produced.
Wow.
Which means the more muscle fibers.
Before even the movement, the focus is making the chemical.
That's right.
Oh, no.
So the movement doesn't do it. It's the focus of that movement.
Focus. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I took all of this and I said, how do I apply this to MS? Well, I came up with things called contraction training, where I'm contracting muscles for enough time that you're sitting there and you're thinking about that contraction.
So you're shortening a muscle, and I'm thinking about this muscle before I open it up. I'm thinking about it.
Yep. But when so that's a good movement to show. So you're thinking about this before you're moving, but when you're here, you're holding this movement and squeezing and contracting that muscle.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4, extending, thinking,
still thinking about, and so I'm focusing on exactly. So I'm in the moment. With what I'm doing. I'm present with what I'm doing.
Right. And that presence, that focus, that thought,
That's the key, isn't it?
that's the key. And then then you create the action. So the problem
wait. The present, but I have an action. This is the action. I'm focusing on it.
Right, but you can't do the action without the focus first. So you don't start the action until the focus is there. Once the focus is there, you start the action. Then you hold that action. That's only one training method. I have about 10 of them. But in this one training method, you're holding that thought and that focus for a certain period of time, long enough.
You're teaching meditation. You're teaching mindfulness.
Yes, it's mindfulness. It's not meditation because
mindfulness.
Right, because meditation will calm you. Yeah. We don't want to be calm when we're working out. We want to be pumped when we're working out. So it's a little bit different, but it is a similar thought. You've got to create the thought before the action. Then the action happens. You continue the thought through the action, and then you stop the action and you're still thinking. So between every rep that you do, you're also thinking, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? What is it that I want my muscle to do? And I train each muscle individually, which is another myth of people with MS. They always told people with MS that you don't want to focus on bodybuilding or working a specific muscle. You want to focus on the whole picture and work the whole body. The problem with that is, how are you going to do a squat if your thighs and your quads and your calves and your glutes are weak and they're not strong enough to do a squat? That functional squat is meaningless because you won't be able to do it. So you have to strengthen those muscles individually. But the training methods that I use cause your brain to think. Every training method. So I've got contraction training. I have something called 1.5 rep training. I have something called stretch training. I've used time under tension. I mean, there's a lot of different training methods that I use, but I use them with the brain connected to the muscle. And I force the muscle to listen to what that thought is. And over time, you're creating a tremendous amount of muscle fiber activation, acetylcholine production. You can be creating neuroplasticity where the nerves are being redirected. You are creating a brain to muscle connection that was lost, and you're getting that back. This doesn't happen in a week. It's time, persistence, consistency, and the proper training that gets people with MS better, not a bunch of squats going up and down and hip bridges. And those are great exercises. Don't get me wrong. I use those exercises, but you can't just tell somebody, here's a program for MS. Let's do some squats. And you have them going up and down and up and down. Or let's lift your leg if you're in a wheelchair. Lift your leg up, put it down, lift it up, put it down. That doesn't do anything for long-term results, benefits for the brain to connect to the muscles and for that person with MS to get the benefits that they need from an exercise program.
Something that just occurred to me about passivity. You know, when people have got a disability, they'll go to the physiotherapist or whatever, and they'll become a passive person within it. But in actual fact, they need to be the active person within the training. So it's the active. So if an MS patient is actually having physiotherapy, the most important part of it all is not what the physiotherapist says, but what you say to your body through your brain, that I am going to use this particular muscle in this particular way. And then the ownership is on the person, not on the therapist.
Right. I love physical therapists. I love, trainers. I love all these people that are helping. But the bottom line is, the type of help that they give will only be effective if the person does the type of training that I do first, not second. Yeah. So you don't want to go to a physical therapist who's moving your arms and your legs for you and expect to be able to get stronger. You want to get stronger first. And then if you need physical therapy, your muscles will respond to that because they're strong enough to respond. People have it backwards. And, I'm not the most popular person out there because I'm throwing the norm out and telling people that norm is old fashioned, and it's something that people have been told over and over. And the programs out there for people with MS are antiquated. They're not going to give you the type of results. But, there are people that don't want to hear that. There are people that want to go and have the easy road to exercise. So they want to listen to the old school thought of, okay, well, let me be passive and let me do whatever they tell me to do. And that's the problem. When you come up with something new and different, you're never the popular person.
Yeah, but also the person, the recipient, if they're passive, they're not going to get anywhere, is what you're saying. And, the other thing that occurred to me is many of the people that you would be working with have probably never done any training in a gym either. So
Yeah.
that would be another issue. And as you were speaking, I just thought about how, when you're doing weight training and you've put another pound or kilo on that bar, and you have to actually tell yourself that you're going to lift it.
Yeah.
Because you don't actually bend down and lift it. You actually say to yourself, I'm going to achieve this. I'm going to create this PB for me. And that's what you're actually talking about, isn't it?
Well, absolutely.
Every movement that you make is another PB for someone.
Yeah. And with bodybuilding, people say, I don't want to be a bodybuilder because I don't want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And as we know, if you have common sense, the chances of anybody looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger who just goes to the gym is slim to none. There's a lot of variables to being a bodybuilder at that level. Bodybuilding is a term, and it's not a competition. Bodybuilding means that you are building your body. So what we are doing is we are bodybuilding. We are forcing our muscles to build, grow, and get stronger. Now, does that mean that you're going to have a 19-inch arm like I do? No. But does it mean that your arm is going to be stronger and be more muscular for you? Yes. And that's what you have to do with MS. You can't look at MS and say, well, I'm just a 60-year-old person and I don't want to put on muscle. It's not a matter of putting on muscle. It's a matter of developing the strength of that muscle and the mobility of that muscle. And with that, you will look better and you will feel better. I had a woman, my oldest client came to me at 75 years old, hunched over in a wheelchair and very, very depressed, and just everything was over. I mean, I got her within several months to get out of that wheelchair and to be able to walk. Within 6 months, she was running up 2 flights of stairs. She was cutting down, and I've got this all on video. She was cutting down trees with an electric branch cutter. She was shoveling snow in Idaho, where she lived, where I trained her. And she was able to do whatever she wants to do. I think she's 78 or just turning 78 now. She's still in better shape now than she was when she came to me. It doesn't matter how old you are. And she doesn't look like a bodybuilder, yet I trained every muscle to get stronger, to get more mobile, and to understand what it is that she wanted it to do. Now, if your muscle isn't strong enough to lift up and you can't lift your arm, you can tell that arm to do whatever it wants. It's not going to do it. You have to have strength with the thought. So it's a matter of a combination of balancing out the thought process of what we're doing and the strength of the muscle to get it to be mobile.
Yeah. Now, one of the things you talked about, David, too, was the fact that when you were given this diagnosis, it would seem pretty hopeless. But because you've got a faith-based background and you've been training kids from churches and places like that anyway, you actually went into your inner strength, into your soul somehow. Could you just share a little bit of that? Just so that the people will know that it's okay, we've got these 3 things that we can use, but he actually used a higher power. And it reminded me of people with, there's this 12-step program that the people use. And I thought he had his own 12-step program. It might not be 12 steps, but...
Yeah, it was one step for me.
Yeah,
It was one step. When I got diagnosed, and I wrote this in my book, you can read it in my book, but when I was diagnosed, the doctor said, you're going to be in a wheelchair in 6 months. And I looked at him and I said, Doc, you know science, you know medicine, that's great, but you don't know my God. I am not going to be in a wheelchair. Okay. And he looked at me like I was crazy.
We have this on tape.
Well, he thought I was crazy, to be honest with you, because he didn't understand what I was talking about, because he didn't have that faith. When I left the hospital, I knew that there was a purpose. And I prayed every day, God, I know there's a purpose why I have this disease. I know you didn't give it to me, but you allowed me to have it because you have a purpose. Show me that purpose. Well, he tested my faith and he tested my patience because he didn't show me that purpose. I didn't understand it. For over a year, I got up every morning and I prayed, God, show me the purpose. And he didn't show me the purpose. But I never lost my faith. And although I got depressed, and I will say that, I was feeling depressed. I felt like my life wasn't worth living with this disease without the purpose. But I kept praying, what's that purpose? During the time that I was looking at the internet and I was finding how terrible this disease was, and I was feeling hopeless, never once did I say to God, why did you do this? Or I got mad at God or gave up my faith. I kept that faith. And then one day I got up. It was probably a little over a year from the time I was diagnosed, maybe almost a year and a half at this point. I looked in the mirror and I was getting ready to just start my day. And when you're filled with faith, you hear that voice, where it came from, or how you hear it. Everybody is different. So for me, it was I heard this voice say to me, you need to get back in the gym and I will show you your purpose. Because I had friends that were bodybuilders coming over my house almost daily, trying to get me into the gym, saying, Dave, you need to work out. You're shrinking, you're getting weaker. You need to go. And I said, no, I'm not going to the gym. I can't move. It's embarrassing. I'm not going to do it. And I just kept getting weaker. And when God said, you've got to go back in the gym and I'll show you your purpose, I let my friends take me to the gym, and I let them help me in and out of equipment. And I had them lifting me up and moving my legs and helping me with my arms and strapping my hands onto dumbbells I couldn't hold because my fingers wouldn't squeeze. So I had these straps on so I could hold the dumbbells with my hand open. And I kept training. And within a few months, I got stronger. And I started feeling, there's something here. And that's when I said, I'm going to compete in a bodybuilding competition to show the world that this type of disease doesn't end your life. Wow. And I did that. And my wife, at the end of that competition, when everybody was patting me on the back and telling me how great I was and how inspirational, my wife looked at me and she said, this is not God's purpose. God's purpose is for you to help people. Now, you took the first step. You got up on stage. You feel good about yourself. You want to do this over and over. You want to compete everywhere. You want to show the world who you are and that you can beat this disease. But she said, think about it. If you keep competing and taking all this time focusing on yourself, how are you really helping someone? God's purpose is never for you to just help yourself. And she said, we need to help other people. And that's where we came up with the MS Fitness Challenge, the charity. And I stopped caring about competing. I kept training the same way I was, as if I was going to compete. And I kept getting stronger and bigger and, more mobile, and using my own training methods within my bodybuilding routines so that I could get my brain connected. But I started to focus on, how can I take this to help other people? Wow. And how can I utilize that? Yeah. And that's when I started really developing these training methods. And I didn't really even bring them out until recently. So it's been like 10 years of doing this and working with people and showing them how to get better before I started going to the masses like I am now with my optimal body training programs and things like that. But this whole thing with God was basically, this is your purpose. Your purpose is now to go out there into the world and show people how they can do this. Not that they can, but how can they? You can always tell people, look at me, I did this, pat me on the back. But how is that helping them to be able to do what it is?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. They need that connection.
Yeah.
That was God's plan. And now my charity is in 25 countries. I've helped hundreds of thousands of people through our websites and things that we've been doing. I personally worked with probably over these 10 years, 1,000 people with MS. We've got a Facebook group with over 7,500 people worldwide with MS.
Amazing.
We're continually out there. I've won so many accolades. And I tell people, don't look at me, look at God, because that's God doing what he's doing. I mean, for me to be voted this year as one of the top 100 healthcare leaders in the world, that's not me. That's God. I don't even think I deserve that. That's God giving me, grace because I'm following what he told me to do. So God is a big factor for me. Now, whether you're a faith-based person or not, you have to find that thing that drives you inside.
Exactly.
Me is faith. Yeah. Other people have different things, whatever that might be.
So I'm going to interrupt you here because, we had Matt on the show, and Matt, got MS when he was 19, and he himself was driven, he's a runner, he's a swimmer. He didn't stop, and there was a will. So what I'm connecting is MS, cancer, and chronic pain, and what Rose and I have been doing since last April is seeking these people out and showing that it doesn't take somebody special. Like, it's not the Dalai Lama. Right. Faith is an absolute key. I mean, it's the spike of the wheel. We think nutrition is important, exercise, which is really what you're talking about, but there's a will, the thread that I'm seeing in all the shows here and all the shows I do for the Israeli people. The thread is God, constant God, and a thread is a will.
However you want to interpret that.
And a drive.
Exactly, within your own culture or whatever.
Biology of belief. Yeah. David, you and your wife, there was a biology of belief, not in your muscle, in the body, the human body. And even though you didn't know what it was going to do, you just had a belief to go forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, I have to say this because you mentioned Matt. I love Matt Embry. He's one of the nicest, sincerest people that I've ever met in my life. And I believe because he's rooted in God, in him, that he is who he is, and he's been as successful as he has been. And I talk to him a lot of times, and we're always connected. We're doing a lot of things together.
Right. He's not lifting weights. He's running and swimming. I'm saying it doesn't matter. What you have, your specific program is so powerful. Because I see women on the Facebook, they're doing just push-ups, but they have the will. They're hearing you. They're following you. So it's a vessel that you're holding for people, saying it is possible.
Yeah. Well, you should. You see, you're in the group, so you get to see it. But I watch people that not only do I train, because I've trained a lot of people, about 40 some odd people worldwide that I personally work with, but also people in my group that are following the Optimal Body program because they're members of that group. They're out there and they're lifting their arms in ways that they couldn't before. I have video of people running upstairs that had trouble walking up them. I have 4 clients that I work with, and I hate to call them clients because, they're friends now and they're students, but they are now bodybuilding. And these are not young kids. These are people, 30, 40, 50 and older that have changed their whole way of thinking with MS and are now able to say, I can do whatever I want. So, these people that wanted to bodybuild and felt they never could because of MS was keeping them where they're at, are now able to fulfill a dream of theirs, and that's to be bodybuilders. I've trained, I think, 4 or 5 people with MS at this point, to get on stages and actually place in the top 3 in fitness and bodybuilding. And you could talk to these people. They're in my group from the UK, from the United States. And these are people that competed against healthy athletes. They didn't go into disabled competitions. They went into regular bodybuilding, fitness, bikini competitions. I had one gentleman came to me who wanted to compete in a transformation at his gym. And there were all these people, like 100 people enrolled in this, and none of them had any diseases or anything. He was the only one with MS. I said, what's your goal? His name was Ryan. I said, what's your goal, Ryan? He says, I want to win. I said, okay, well, that's what we're going to do. He won. He won. Now, it was hard work. You know, and anybody that thinks that this is easy stuff, and if they're going to try to follow what I'm doing, they're just going to, you know, skate and just, you know, glide through it. It's not that. You've got
it's work.
There's work to beat this disease.
Yeah. Now, the other thing, as you were talking, that David, that I thought about is patients with MS usually have to give up work. And I mean, if they do physical work, well, they do, maybe. But I'm just thinking about your patients, your clients, whatever you call them. Have they been able to return to work? And also about parenting. You know, a lot of MS patients think, I'll never be the dad that I wanted to be now that I've got MS. Could you talk a little bit about that too, please? And also, you know, if you've got a job that requires concentration, I'm sure that after doing this training, your concentration capacity has actually doubled or tripled even.
Oh, absolutely. The people that I work with, whoever can work is working. There's nobody that's not working that should be. You know, they're able to do it. I have a lot of moms that I train that one of them has 3 kids running around the house. Another one has a couple of kids. I mean, they all have children and they're all able to, and some of them are young kids and they're able to take care of them because they're stronger now. And they tell me that I've given them their energy back and their strength to be able to deal with their children. So there's no limit to what you can accomplish if you train correctly. And I mean that not to say that I'm the only person that knows how to train correctly. You know, I'm sure there are other physical therapists and trainers that understand what I'm saying, but I am the only program that is out there for multiple sclerosis that does what I do. There are other MS programs out there, and they're good programs. I won't say anything negative about anybody's fitness program, but they're utilizing the same functional movements that people have been told to do all these years that have never really gotten them anywhere because they feel that, okay, you know, they don't want to push people with MS too much, or they don't understand what that connection should be with the brain. But we've got to do this to have sustainable long-term benefits where you get ahead of the disease. So I tell people this: MS is usually ahead of you and you're here trying to chase it. Well, we have to flip that, and you have to be here and MS has to be chasing you. If you're not doing that and you are constantly chasing MS by just doing regular exercises, you cannot get ahead of the disease. We've got to get ahead of the disease. And the way to get ahead of it is by doing the type of training that I'm the only person out there doing right now.
So you have a no victim policy.
Yeah. There's no victims. There's no losers. Everybody has to win. You know, and how far you win is up to you. So whether your goal is I want to walk my dog, or your goal is I want to stand on a bodybuilding stage like you did, it could happen. There's no limit.
It's achievable. Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't matter how old you are. I'm being asked to go to New York to work with a woman who's 87 years old with MS, who said, if anybody could help me, you're the only person that can. I don't want to die like this. I want to die being able to move. Okay. So Can I help an 87-year-old be able to get up out of a wheelchair? Absolutely. It doesn't matter how old you are. It matters how strong your will is.
Wow.
If your will is there, we will get that brain working with those legs and we'll get up and down.
Yeah. The other area that we talked about earlier on was about the fact that your early childhood was not that easy. And you were a bit rebellious. And as you talk, I thought you used this rebellion against MS now.
You channeled it.
You channeled it.
Gross.
Yeah. Could you just talk about the fact that, your dad was in a bad position and he remained angry all his life, although he's still alive, and he's going to stay alive just to prove the Nazis wrong, isn't he?
That's true. He had a very, very rough childhood. He was born in the ghetto in Europe. He was put into concentration camps when he was 17 years old. He didn't get out until he was 22, I guess. It was 5 years of camps, of torture, of starvation, of watching your family be murdered. When he got to the United States and started a family, he didn't know how to be a father. He didn't understand how to deal with his own anger of the type of stuff that he was put through. I mean, my dad, we did a book and a documentary on him that's won awards. The stories that he tells you, it's just mind-boggling that he would stand in a railroad car with people like sardines packed in where they couldn't move or sit down, and there were dead bodies next to you, standing up. I mean, could you imagine being put through that as a young person when your life should be fun and you're out there at 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 years old? You should be out there having a good time, and he's in a car of people standing up, being squashed together, some dead, and watching people shot and hung and tortured, and he was tortured, all these things. For him, he was a very angry person, so I lived in a household where there was anger, and that anger to me put me in a place where I became very rebellious. I became involved in street gangs and things like that I shouldn't have, and did terrible, terrible things. And that type of stress, as you both know, probably led to me getting a disease like this, where it would manifest in your body, all that anger, all that tension. As a kid, I had mono, I had Epstein-Barr, I had those diseases that, are basically stress-related autoimmune diseases. So
exactly.
Probably, MS was inevitable, and I just had to learn. And of course, when I started to become a faith-filled person, my line of thinking became different. I became a different person. I started to channel that anger and that frustration and that stress into the positive. And then when I got diagnosed with MS, you see how God prepares you? When I got diagnosed with MS, I had changed who I was. So I knew what I had to do because God already prepared me for that. And it was just a matter of now taking this positivity and putting it into how do I deal with MS. And then once I learned that, like my wife said, it was time for us to help other people.
Yeah. Could I before we finish, could I refer us back to the general population, that have got chronic ailments, not just autoimmune, but generally, like they've got chronic fatigue, they've got what else, Tova? Lots and lots of those different types of issues.
Anxiety, and that turns into different kind of pain. I mean, chronic pain is not normal. It's chronic pain. The body heals pain, and chronic pain is generally what we have found through science, and many doctors we work with, that it's coming from the brain. The body is having a physical reaction to to the fight and flight mechanism, which you probably have studied and plays a huge role in, you know, the endorphins and all. So continue, Rose.
I've lost my train of thought. Sorry. The thing that I wanted to actually bring up was the fact that a person, for example, has got chronic fatigue, so they can't get out of bed. So it's actually using that skill that you have actually developed to say, my body can get out of this bed, my body can do this stuff. And in actual fact, it might mean that they actually have to say to their lower back or to their, you can get up.
Yeah, no,
you can activate that part of your body to get you out.
I agree with that, but you know, you still have to train the body to be able to do it. So
you have to start somewhere, though.
Right. So, you know, when people come to me and their one arm is not lifting up as high as the other and they're pushing and one's here and one's here, what we have to do is we have to strengthen that hand or that arm that's not going up so that it's able to go up. So when you tell it to go up, there's muscle there to be able to do that. So it's this constant give and take from the thought process to the strength building. So it's not just one or the other. It's not just, hey, one day I'm going to tell myself I could run and I'm going to be able to run. I had to be able to develop those muscles again so that I could run or jump rope or do what I can do. It wasn't a matter of me just saying, Dave, let's just jump rope today because we want to do it. It's, you have to have that mindset.
Well, you jumped one time and then you sat down.
Yeah,
the next day you jumped 2 times and then you sat down.
Yep, and that's part of the process. When I train people, when we're doing repetitions and, you know, our rep range is, let's say 10 to 12 reps of an exercise. And if they can't get to 10 reps, I tell them it's 1 rep at a time. Every rep is a step, which is on the back of the shirt. It says every rep is a step. We take 1 rep, we stop. Then we do another rep and we stop. And eventually those reps become a chain of reps. Right. And then you're able to do your 10 or 12. But if you cannot do 10 or 12 and you can only do 3, then you do 3 and you stop. And then you do another one and that makes 4 and you add another one. And you have to keep building. The process of what I do is a building process. It's a lifestyle. This is not 30-day beach body. You know, this isn't, hey, you know, let's do the insanity workout and we're going to be, you know, in this top shape. You know, MS doesn't work like that. This is not a 30-day disease. This is not an insanity program. This is, we have a disease that we have to battle every single day. You know, so we have to build on this and we have to start and then get better and better and better and better. And we have to look at this, that there's no expiration until we're expired. So we don't put a 30-day limit or a 60-day limit or say, oh, I'm going to be able to run in 90 days. You just have to get stronger day by day by day and let the process work. And then you'll be able to run. When that time comes, you'll be able to run. You'll be able to run up and down those stairs. Some people I train, they're running up and down the stairs in 60 days. Some people, it's 6 months, where our bodies respond differently. But the one thing that is constant is every single person, 100% of the time, and I have 100% success rate, will get better to some degree where their life is improved by training the way I train them.
Fantastic.
So on the heels of what Rose was talking about, chronic pain people, and Dr. John Sarno is one of the doctors that we write off of his information. One of his absolute is like, you have to exercise because there's nothing physically wrong with the body. It's the mind, but the physical body needs. So it's interesting because there's something physically wrong with MS, but it's kind of you're overriding the physical and the emotional. You're overriding it with like a new, not command, but this is where we have many patients that have been in chronic pain, ready to get surgery, and they just went out and said, that's it. Because you're telling us the mind and the soul together can override the body and change the body.
Right. Absolutely. No
or
doubt.
connect the body. Look, it's not about overriding the body or changing the body. It's connecting the body and the mind so it becomes one.
Yes,
Yeah.
And we're one whole unit rather than separate entities, really, in a way. And what you're doing, David, is exactly that. You're training the mind to.
Well, Rose, I tell people this, it's not just that I'm a training coach, physical training, is that it's almost like a life coach. Okay, where I'm training you on how to live your life with this disease through exercise.
Right.
It's not just about the exercise, because the exercise is an action. But without the thought and without the mindset and what I call mental fitness, then the exercise is basically worthless to most degrees. I mean, yes, exercise is good if you're just going through the motions of doing it. You'll get a little bit out of it, but you won't get what you should out of it because you didn't combine the brain, the thought, the mindset, the lifestyle, everything that you need to put in together to make it to be successful.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah. So we have.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Rose.
David has to go back to work shortly.
I've got to train. I've got to work with some of my nice students.
Yeah. Well, so listen, I want to say a few things. One, if anyone has any questions, they can also contact you. You have a Facebook page. You have a couple of pages. Dave Lyons, MS Fitness Challenge. The other thing is I wanted to say is that if anyone has, if somebody called you who had cancer and wanted you to work with them, does it matter? It doesn't matter if it's MS.
I've worked with people with ALS, with Alzheimer's, with cancer, with MS. I mean, I'm not just an MS trainer. I specialize in that because I have the disease and I want to help as many in my community as I can. But I'll help anybody overcome whatever challenge physically, mentally that they have when it comes to fitness.
Wow.
Yes. David, the other thing is that it occurred to me as you were speaking that people with myasthenia gravis would benefit extremely well from what you do.
Yeah.
Because again, it's the acetylcholine receptors that are being damaged.
Right.
In myasthenia gravis. So to override that.
You can override all of that. It doesn't matter what your challenge is. What matters is how you train your body and your mind to overcome that challenge. That's all.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
It's
amazing.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
And if anybody, I've got to say this because I got to plug my Optimal Body membership. So we have a membership that's very affordable for people that cannot afford to hire me as their trainer. And it's a group, and we have hundreds of people in this group already. We just launched it December 1st, but it's called Optimal Body Personal Fitness. And Optimal Body Personal Fitness is a training program that we do for MS specifically. And they can become a member, and there's all videos, and it takes them through my training methods. We have info on nutrition, on mindset, on exercise, and it's really, really very detailed on how to beat this disease through my training programs. So if anybody's interested in that, I think I sent you the link. You could post the link and let them check it out, and I'd love to have them as members of our group.
Right. Great. So we're going to catch you for another hour in a few more months. We'll find you. We'll track you down. Maybe we can have a Be Live in the gym and kind of watch you train someone. Because Rose and I are like bringing the focus of our show on various mindfulness, whether it's journaling or mindfulness or meditation or different ways, yoga. But the fitness is such an important part of chronic pain, of autoimmune disease. And I think it's the opposite. When people think pain, MS, cancer, stop moving. The message from God is please move.
Yeah.
Please think, please move, please breathe, please pray.
Yeah.
Please accept, please love, please believe.
Right. That's the truth.
So,
now it's the beginning of the day here in Melbourne. So anyone who wants to comment or ask any questions, I'll be around for most of the morning. So put in any questions and I'll be able to respond.
Right.
And David, thank you so much. It's been really wonderful hearing how the mind and the body are one.
Well,
It's the
thank you
same
for having
story
me.
week in and week out.
It was a pleasure.
And you've actually demonstrated it. And as Tova said, it would be lovely if we could have a ancillary sort of little session where you actually got some people to actually do the work, like not so much as an interview, but actually to do a little bit, like even one movement of a particular muscle, and you demonstrating to us how we tell that muscle to move, if that would be all right with you.
We can do that. We can do that. You just reach out to me when you need me.
Beautiful.
Fantastic. Thanks, David.
Take good care.
All right. Bye-bye, ladies.
Bye. Bye, David.
Okay, we're going to stop streaming. Okay, wow.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.